Hi there, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be going over some of the essential information that, and hopefully also just some helpful information generally for those of you that are interested in applying to ACEEE's Energy Equity for Renters Technical Assistance Opportunity. If you've been following along with us, it's actually our third call for applications. And we'll get into today's call about sort of, what all the what all you might think about applying for our support and help with, give you some ideas and examples, and then talk about the process. So thanks for joining today. If you are if someone just passed this on to you, and maybe you're a little bit unfamiliar with ACEEE, we're the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. We're a national nonprofit organization, research organization. We handle all manner of different topics related to energy efficiency. It's the way I describe it. We are, and things that connect with energy efficiency. And, we've got a lot of different teams that work on various different aspects of clean energy work. For us, myself and my colleague Roxana, who will introduce ourselves more in just a second, but just to mention, we're part of our local policy team. It's part of several teams we have here that work at different levels of geography and government. We work a lot with local governments and communities and all the different partners and stakeholders that work there. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Nick, though, just to run through some housekeeping items. Going.
Hi, everyone. Just running through a quick couple things here. So we are going to be recording this webinar and we'll be making it available to all registrants within a few business days. We will also provide the slides to all registrants. To ask a question during the webinar, please submit it via the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to it during the Q&A segment toward the end of the webinar. You can also upvote questions that you think are particularly good, and we will prioritize those. You can also talk to one another and network via the chat button at the bottom of your screen.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Nick. Okay, all right. So just to introduce myself, and I'll turn it over to my colleague who's going to come on a little bit later in the presentation and talk through some of the information we want to present today. My name's Stefan Samaripas. I'm a senior manager at ACEEE. Like I said, I'm on our local policy team. A couple things to note about me and my work here. For the entire time I've been here, I've done a lot of work, research work looking at the intersection of energy efficiency and affordability, particularly in rental housing. A lot of in my early years, a lot of focus on bigger multifamily, and then these days a lot your smaller scale rental properties. I'm also the lead author in our City Clean Energy Scorecard, so if you're familiar with that, I also lead the work around that and some associated technical assistance. So I'll pass it over to Roxana just to introduce herself.
Thank you, Stefan. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Roxana Ayala. I work with Stefan on the local policy team as a senior research analyst. As Stefan mentioned, my work sort of relates mostly to research and technical assistance on local level energy efficiency policies and initiatives. I particularly focus on local government and utility-led initiatives that really aim to scale an energy efficient workforce and increase energy affordability.
Cool. Okay. All right. So if you just came on in the last few minutes, just to recap what we're going to go over today. So I'm going to give a real quick intro to our Energy Equity for Renters initiative on the whole here at ACEEE, tell you a little bit about how it got started and its various different elements. And then to start off our conversation today, I'm going to talk about some of the past technical assistance work that we've done as part of this initiative, working with local governments, working with community-based organizations, sometimes some other partners too. And then Roxana is going to come on and talk about the specific steps of applying for this round of technical assistance. And then after that, we'll have time for questions. Should have plenty of time. As Nick mentioned, definitely drop those in the Q&A, and then we'll get around to those at the end, and should have time to go through a good bit. Okay, so our Energy Equity for Renters initiative. So we got this initiative started back in 2021. So it's been around for a little over 4 years now. And we created this initiative particularly because, especially in talking with a lot of both local governments and community-based organizations across the country, heard that, one of the most challenging but also one of the most urgent parts of their community in terms of, improving energy efficiency, saving energy bills, reducing energy bills, was really in rental housing. And, the research, if you look at what's happening on the national scale, really backs that up. Rental homes, even though they're smaller than owner-occupied homes, consume more than 15% more energy per square foot. Also, we've documented in past research, that renters tend to have higher energy burdens than owner-occupied homes, with a third having high energy burdens here in the U.S. And there's a lot of different ways that you can look at some of the challenges that renters are facing in this country, right? Not only with energy burdens, which are a measure of how much of income is going towards an energy bill, not only is there a substantial share of renter households' income going to energy bills, but also about a third of U.S. renters are actually behind on their energy bills. And we've seen that tends to be the case that that share increases when you look at folks with a lower income. Also tends to be much more prevalent for households of color. And of those behind on their energy bills, a lot of folks are really doing all they can to kind of keep on track with those. And so, sometimes folks take on some risky or some really challenging strategies. 4 of 5 renters, in recent research have reported skipping on paying on other bills and necessities so they could keep up on their energy bills. And then 2 out of 5 have reported actually keeping their home at an unsafe or unhealthy temperature at least once a year. So cutting back on those energy costs to hopefully stay current. And then we've also seen that there's a lot of climate risk for rental units across the country. There's a huge number of rental units that are at risk for environmental hazards, floods, wildfires, number of different environmental disasters. So with our initiative, we do some different aspects of we do some different kinds of project work. So we have done sort of national research on the topics around rental properties, energy efficiency, and energy affordability. If you go to the landing page on our website for initiative that highlights all the sort of big publications, we've got a policy design guide report. We've got a implementation toolkit that I know a lot of folks have found really helpful. Some other smaller publications, blogs, and whatnot. We also do make an effort to stay on top of what communities across the country, local, state, what have you, are passing policies to advance equitable rental energy efficiency. We have a map that tracks those online, same landing page. But today, what we're going to talk about is the technical assistance that that we're offering coming up in the next year and a half or so. And then, like I mentioned when we first came on, we've done a couple of rounds of this with communities and community-based organizations over the last few years. So we'll talk about what that looked like. It is a lot of this initiative's work and focus is technical assistance, though, lately. One thing before I get into some examples, I just wanted to highlight is that we've really grown how expanded, evolved how we approach technical assistance in this initiative. And one of the most important things I think to emphasize is that we go through this iterative process where when we first started working on doing this technical assistance with communities, we thought we were going to do a lot of one-on-one technical assistance. And what we found in interacting with several communities all at once is that a lot of those communities wanted to interact with one another. And they wanted to find ways where the technical assistance that we were providing could really be leveraged and complemented for one community by what was happening in another community. And so, one of the things we've done a lot throughout the technical assistance is not just work one-on-one with folks. We do that, but we also do put in a lot of effort to make sure that communities that are receiving this technical assistance are connecting with one another, exchanging ideas, learning from one another's experience. So a lot of opportunities we do, for example, peer exchange calls periodically, and find other ways to connect people too. So that all informs the technical assistance work that we do. We're hoping to make sure that we've seen really great results with this so far, so we want to continue to do that as much as we can. And one of the things that we've also seen out of this is that in doing that work, we not only help the individual communities we're working with, but we also gain a lot of knowledge and a lot of lessons learned from that work that we can then take and then bring to the rest of the country, right? Even folks that we weren't working with. And that really enriches and helps support other local governments, other communities in doing this sort of work. And sometimes they see that some of the publications and things we put out, and then they come back around and apply for technical assistance. So very much an iterative model. Okay, so some quick examples here. I mentioned there are a couple of previous cohorts that we've worked with providing technical assistance. These are the communities. I won't go through every one. I'll highlight some examples in a moment. But I highlighted in this slide, a couple of communities in particular, just to show you the difference in scale, right? So we have worked with King County, Washington, for example, last cohort, which 2 million plus people, huge, obviously huge community, has Seattle. And then we also work with smaller communities too. We worked with the village of Skokie, which is about 60,000 people outside of Chicago. So broad range, diversity of different folks all across country, different scales, different sizes. Now, I mentioned, we've done put a lot of emphasis on developing tools, developing deliverables as part of our technical assistance that come out of this collaborative approach. And we find that oftentimes we've been able to create resources, we've been able to create tools that can benefit multiple communities that we're providing technical assistance to. And so this is just again, won't go through all the specifics on this, but this is a list of some of the things that we have provided in the past. For example, tools to calculate energy burden at the local level, guidelines and questions and examples of how to engage with owners and residents of rental properties, lots of implementation guidance, like I said. So yeah, I'll mention in the next couple of slides before I turn it over to Roxanne, I'll mention a couple of things we've done specifically for particular communities, but I did want to highlight some of the deliverables that have come out of multiple communities that were receiving technical assistance asking us for our help. Okay, so on the last go around, we worked with a couple of communities that were very interested in doing surveys of renters. King and Alachua counties. King is in, as I mentioned, in Washington. That's Seattle. Alachua is in Florida, and is home to Gainesville, Florida. It's for University of Florida, if you're familiar with that. But yeah, they both were interested in surveying renters. And one of the things that we were able to do, because both had this same request, is we were able to line up the timelines on the work relatively to be aligned pretty much the same, so that what we were doing with one community could also benefit the other community in helping shape the questions they were asking and give them some food for thought about how they wanted to structure this survey they wanted to send out to renters and how they actually wanted to deliver it. I'll just mention a couple of things here. So one of the particularly, I think, really great things about finding ways to have these technical assistance projects be complementary is that King County has a climate equity community task force, which is made up of a lot of local community-based organizations. These are folks that really do a lot of advising, guidance, directing the county on their climate equity work. And it was really great because they have a lot of connections with renters. And Alachua didn't really was kind of limited in what they could do in terms of testing out the survey. And so they really benefited from having King County's connections with all these different folks in their community with renters and allowed some really robust testing of the survey before we actually put it out and started getting it out to folks. So again, a really good example of how aligning and thinking about sort of how we can get these projects to complement one another whenever possible it can be really beneficial. St. Petersburg, Florida, another Florida community. So they have a home rehab program, actually multiples, and it asked us to take a look and take a look for their existing home rehab program. They wanted to make it more accessible and more inviting to rental properties to participate, and also think about what they could do to really get folks to do more energy efficiency work in doing their rehabs. And so we took a look at the programs, we came up with this gap analysis, and identified several opportunities. So it was really, really impactful from what we've seen. I mean, one of the things that folks there in St. Pete have indicated to us is that not only did it help them rethink about this one program that they had asked us to take a look at, but actually has helped them really rethink all their home rehab programs. And so, very good example. Different than the survey work, right, that I gave in the previous example. This is more focused on, sort of doing that top level policy program research and taking a look at like where the gaps are, where the opportunities are to improve something. And then I'll finish up here. So this is a few examples from some other communities that we have worked with. Burlington, Vermont, we helped them develop an infographic and some educational videos around the topic of weatherization. You can actually see the example here on the slide of what that infographic looked like. We got some of our communication staff involved in that, which was really helpful. Did some other gap analysis in another couple of locations, Cincinnati, Skokie. We've done rental market stakeholder research and actually have conducted some interviews with stakeholders in communities where it was helpful, Cambridge and Philly. And then also too, very notable, we worked with San Jose on updating their terms and conditions around their electrification program to make sure that they were doing all they could to protect renters' housing and energy security in promoting retrofits of properties. Okay, all right, so those are a few examples. Happy to come back and talk more or share some more examples, but for now, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Roxana, and she's going to walk you through the steps for the application.
Sure. Thank you again, Stefan. And again, welcome everyone. We're happy that you're all here today and interested in this technical assistance opportunity. For the second half of this presentation, as Stefan mentioned, I'll provide details about the application requirements, offer a few pointers to consider if you're interested in applying, and walk through the application process. Next slide, please. So as Stefan mentioned, ACEEE will provide a new round of no-cost technical assistance services for up to 5 communities. Each team does need to include at least 1 local government and 1 community-based organization. And so ACEEE will provide technical assistance from February of 2026 to June 2027, but proposed projects do not have to run for the full duration of this period. At a minimum, projects should scope out their work for a length of at least 2 months. But we can work with we will work with the recipients to really fit the scope or the length of the TA to best fit the needs of the community. But for this round of applications, we are seeking projects with initiatives that will improve energy efficiency, the energy efficiency rental housing, while also the preservation and or expansion of housing affordability. So in the next slide, I'll share a little bit more about the minimum requirements for the application and then share some criteria and considerations that would make an application competitive. So for the application requirements, we do require a lead applicant to be a local government or community-based organization. For the application purposes, a lead applicant is simply the one that is submitting the application. For the project itself, both the local government and communication will need to be involved or work collaboratively on in the project. As mentioned earlier, we are looking for a proposed project that would support a policy or program that aims to improve rental housing energy efficiency while also preserving and expanding housing affordability. Additionally, the proposed project should demonstrate how their TA project will support any current or planned local activities, as this will help us understand the impact that the project could have locally. And then lastly, all applications need to have a scope of work with the roles that the local government, CBO, and any other partners involved in the project, and sort of the roles explaining which each project will do, excuse me, what each partner will do in the project itself. The scope should also include a timeline for the activities highlighted or included in the project itself. So for example, this could be any time-sensitive dates for us to consider for when a policy or program should be implemented or the designed sort of timeline. So in the next two slides, I'll share a few pointers for really how to make what makes an application competitive. So ultimately, we do want to provide TA services and support to communities to ensure that they maximize benefits of or maximize the benefits of their policies and programs. So we've characterized a few qualities for which a TA applicant to consider to make their application a little bit more competitive. So if a TA so they can consider aligning their proposed TA project with any of ACEEE's, or not any, but with some of our ACEEE's policy best practice research, such as a new lease on energy or the toolkit for energy equity for renters. Applicants should demonstrate how their projects could result in substantial energy and non-energy benefits for renters, and projects that demonstrate strong relationships with local governments and CBOs will also be key. We know that partnerships can really maximize the impact that a program can have as well and the benefits. And then any projects that demonstrate an innovative approach to their policy and or program development, and demonstrating also how this sort of innovative approach can be replicated across other cities in the United States. Next slide, please. So as people on the call consider if this opportunity fits your needs, I'll offer a few pointers that you can consider before applying. So the first would be that a competitive team should hold a shared sense of the goals that they want to achieve within a project and how that relates back to the local context or local community-wide climate goals. Again, we want to ensure that projects have impact for everyone in their community. So sort of having that clear goal of how they want to achieve the TA project, but also how it can relate to local community-wide climate goals. It'll be important to also identify a point of contact that it can be consistent and prompt. We want to make sure that we are being responsive to your TA request and ensure that the TA is fitting the needs of your community. But in order to do so, having someone that can be responsive to emails, attend check-ins, and really in providing that feedback would really help ensure that we sort of achieve those goals of creating an impactful TA. We also know that relationships are key for long-term success of the projects post the project. So being in a position to build and maintain community partners or government relationships beyond the TA will also be key. ACEEE can definitely connect you to other folks or to other communities, to other partners in your community So ensuring that your organization or staff have capacity to continue those relationships beyond the project will be key. And then also we will work, so effective TA is also, will be also effective if recipients can be adaptable and flexible. We understand that circumstances might change as we went during the start of the project, during the time of the project. So being able to be flexible to some of these changes and or within the community or how other broader factors might shift the project will be key as well for an effective TA. Next slide, please. So now that I've sort of given an overview of the main details of the application, I'll be switching screens quickly and really sharing sort of the application form itself and the process for applying. And then within this process, I'll share a few key resources hyperlinked in the application that could be essential to have and just to share as you consider applying. So if you want to follow along as I sort of talk through these resources and share the screen for the application, I will be dropping a link to the application in the chat. So folks can feel free to click along and follow along. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Okay, so if you're on the screen or on your monitor using the link that I shared or via mobile, you'll land in a page here that will take you to the application form. So this is the form that you will use in order to view and submit the application. As a reminder, applications for this technical assistance are due by end of day January 9th of 2026. And the application itself or the form itself includes all the content that we shared or that I've so far shared in the previous slides. So providing an overview of the initiative briefly, and then also providing again, some of that or outlining the list of minimum requirements and again, offering some pointers for what makes a competitive applicant or what characteristics of applicant can have to have a competitive application. So for the first link here, this is a link that will sort of take you to our Energy Equity for Renters webpage, and it will list some of the content that Stefan went over, so providing an overview of the initiative itself. And then also here, you'll find more information of the other types of TA that we completed for the other 8 cities. So Stefan mentioned 2 of the cities or the TA projects for the cities that we worked with, and this page will include the TA for the remaining cities. So if you wanted to view more examples than the ones already shared in this presentation, we encourage you to take a look here. Next, we also hyperlinked a PDF file with an overview of the applications. So you can download the file itself to reference offline, to reference back to the requirements for the application, who can apply to the application itself, and then again, refer back to the other pointers that we've mentioned here. But it also could be a good way to share with other partners who you may be interested in working with for this project and have them share that file themselves with these partners so that they can get a better sense of what the application or the opportunity itself is about and learn a little bit more about the application. And then lastly here, you can also download a copy of the application questions. We know that working offline can offer more flexibility when working collaboratively on the questions with other partners. So having these questions offline can really help or guide your preparation before submitting. And we also know that this offers a little bit more flexibility to allow you to work at your pace. But still, if you decide to answer the questions online through by clicking through the application itself. And if for whatever reason your computer crashes or responses are not showing up when you return back to the screen, you can always email us, and we may be able to recover your responses that on the back end and send those over to you so that you don't have to again start over. So again, if the link to the application will be in the chat, and it will also be shared, I think, via email. So please do use this link to submit your questions. You can go through the different slides or the different pages here, which will essentially show the questions themselves, and then towards the end you can submit a final application. And again, as a reminder, either the local government or CBO will apply or will submit one application for the project itself. So stop sharing my slide or my screen, excuse me. Okay. And so before we move on to opening to answering any questions that folks may have, I do want to share my contact information. So if we don't get to the questions that you may have today, please feel free to email me at the email address here on the screen, and I'll also include it in the email. I'll also include my email in the chat for those who may not be viewing the screen on their computer. We are also available to schedule a brief one-on-one meetings to discuss any potential, if you have any potential like specific questions about a project you might have, and we'll sort of schedule these meetings around as our schedules permit. Next slide, please. So now we'll open it up for questions, or well, read the questions and respond to your questions in the chat. So we can start by doing that.
And one thing I forgot, I realized that we didn't throw in on the slides while Oksana's looking at the questions, is that so for community-based organizations that participate in this technical assistance, there is an opportunity to have some stipend funding to help cover the time and energy that goes into working on whatever the technical assistance work that we're doing. Those are not like huge, funding by any means. Typically, we do give people some room to sort of request funding that matches their need, right? So you can tell us what you're thinking about in terms of what you need to cover, and then how much that would be. We'll work to do as much as we can to cover folks in terms of the budget we have for this. But I will just, if you're looking for an idea of sort of what people request, it's probably averages about $5,000-$6,000, something on that order. But again, we've seen some that were lower, some were higher. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
And Stefan, while we're talking about the community-based organizations, is there, well, I know we have a definition for how we characterize community-based organizations as well. Do you have that top of mind as well? Sort of the definition we're running with for what a CBO might be considered for this application?
There's more information in the materials about sort of, what counts as a community-based organization for this purpose. But particularly what we're looking for is community-based organizations that are serving that primarily serve, anyway, disadvantaged communities. So that could be, low-income folks within a community, people of color, people with disabilities, other folks that, are typically, in a disadvantaged population or community kind of definition. But there's more specifics on that in the application materials. So I don't have the full rundown on stuff, but it's in there.
Okay. Yeah. So for folks who have any questions about what specific constitutes a CBO and/or the different types of partners for what would be considered a CBO, I would refer back to the either the technical assistance overview hyperlinked in the application itself. Cool. And so there's also a question of um, how how is a TA offering measured? So I believe, so in terms of like hours of support from ACEEE, and I believe this is part of the process for applicants building out a scope of work, right, Stefan? So sort of identifying, um, I guess the TA applicant would sort of have to define like what they would anticipate, how many hours they would anticipate ACEEE to work on the TA itself. Um,
No, actually they
I
don't.
don't know.
In building out a scope of work, so we do ask if you're applying to propose a scope of work for what you see as this work looking like and when it will occur. And that doesn't have to be like an enormously super detailed document. It can be something on the order of like a page or two, something like that. But what we're looking for with that, the essential kind of elements is that um, you make an effort to think about sort of the tasks that to the best of your knowledge are involved in the work. And again, if you have questions about you want to do some work but you're not really sure what would be involved, that's a perfect reason to like reach out to us, and then we can have a conversation either on email or like on a quick one-on-one conversation to kind of help you fill out that detail. But a sense of like, okay, what's going to be roughly involved in what you're asking for. At least a proposal on the timing. A lot of times I tend to find that folks, when they submit their scopes of work, maybe kind of overly optimistic on the timing. Like it helps. Sometimes we have to go back after someone's selected and kind of rework the timeline somewhat so that we build in enough time for going back and forth with like community partners or anticipating like sort of our availability to do various different tasks. And then so key elements on the scope of work. So far, I talked about rough idea of like the tasks that are involved, when those are occurring, some sort of timeline. Doesn't have to be super specific, but at least an idea, and gives us an idea, hopefully, of like whether this is going to be like a project that's going to take 3 or 4 months, or is it going to be like a year and a half, which it can be. But to Roxana's point, it doesn't have to be. Right? We can take on shorter term projects. And then the final element to look for in the scope of work for us is just seeing that everyone is identified that's involved, right, in the application. That you're thinking about, okay, we're us as the applicant, or you in your case, right, where you see yourself in this work, what you're asking us to do, and then also whatever your partner is in this application, what is it that they're going to be doing, right? So if you're a local government and you've got your CBO partner in the scope of work, you should make sure to include something about how that community-based organization is going to be involved, right? And lay that out. Is it going to be reviewing the work at different points, right? Or is it going to be something like, we're going to, like in the example of a couple of communities, we've worked with a couple of communities and helped develop questions and refined questions for things like focus groups or stakeholder interviews. And then maybe the CBO in that case is going to take that and they're actually going to do the interviews. They're actually going to do the focus groups, right? But that's the sort of thing that we're looking for in the scope of work, is to figure out, okay, for everyone who's involved, what are they going to be doing in what you're thinking about, when they're going to be doing it, and at least lay that out, at least to at least a rough degree. Like I said, this doesn't have to be anything super long. It can be like page or two if that works for you. You don't have to go into a lot of detail, but that's where that's kind of what we're looking for when we talk about like scope of work.
Thanks, Stefan. Let's see. So yeah, so once recipients are sort of selected for the to receive technical assistance from ACEEE, ACEEE will be the primary provider of the technical assistance. We will primarily use emails to interact with the recipients, recipients will be notified via email. And then we will set up sort of a cadence of check-ins with recipients. That's depending on the needs and availability of both ACEEE and recipients. And then primarily we'll use emails as well to share drafts of whatever deliverable we are putting together for the city. And then the city will provide feedback on these drafts as well, and use our check-ins to communicate some of that feedback or discuss some of that feedback as well.
We also do set up, we have in the last couple of times, we could check with everyone on this, like with who's selected, but we also typically set up shared folders to make sure that, everyone on a technical assistance team is having access to the same materials, right? So a lot of times we do that through Google Drive. That seems to have been the preference, but there's we can pursue some other options too, if that's out there. And one other point, I guess, to mention, both kind of on this and then also on the previous question is, if you are, the application, because of the way this is structured, because of the grants that are funding this work, we're looking for, one local government, one community-based organization. But I will say, if you do want to include other partners, you are welcome to do so. And it is something that, when it comes to the competitive criteria for sort of narrowing down, it's one of the things that we definitely look for and as a preferred quality, right? Is if you've got other groups, other folks, whether it's a utility program or a housing department or, whatever it might be, like having other folks involved and having a role for them in your scope of work, having them connected in with all this, that's certainly welcome and something to look for.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Stefan. So if the partner you were interested in sort of bringing it along doesn't necessarily fall within the definition of that we have for CBOs, they can definitely be brought on as an additional partner for the project. And so the TA project itself will only be offered, I believe, across the United States. So anything outside of that may not qualify. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stefan, but that's
our funding is current funding is only can only be applied in the US.
Yep, and our funding should be good to provide this technical assistance at least during the period of that was mentioned, so February of 2026 or through June of 2027. So we don't anticipate having any changes to that. So yeah, and there's a question, Stefan, in the chat about sort of the source of the funding here, but for the program itself. But I think we can maybe, I don't know if that you want to look.
I mean, so this initiative has been mostly funded through Kresge Foundation and also the Summit Foundation. It's kind of the two, and we've had some other funders kind of come in and out based on sort of opportunities as they arise. But those are kind of the two notable ones.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think we've covered most questions now. So in the past we have covered in the last round we did provide a TA to 10 cities, and this year we're providing TA to 5 communities to answer someone's question in the chat.
At least 5 anyway. I mean, it depends on sort of like, we're looking for the strongest applications out there and work with folks that seem really well positioned to really kind of utilize this technical assistance and make an impact in their community. And so, but that being said, I mean, ultimately, our goal is to use all the funding that we have, right? So, if we can, depending on what the applications look like and the requests are, if we can do more than 5, then we will do more than 5 for sure. But at least 5. So that's kind of what we're working with, is to see how far we can stretch the funding and supporting people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, and all to answer to a few folks, all the slides will be available after this call. My colleague Nig will send those around As far as the material itself, we do only have that available in English. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Okay. Um, so we have about 15 minutes left in the call. So if anybody wanted to come off mute and ask any questions that they may still have, or
I
raise your
think they have to raise their hands.
sorry, yes, that's what I meant. Sorry. You can raise your hands and then my colleague Nick will bring you off mute. Or you can continue to put your questions in the Q&A option as well.
It looks like we've got a couple of people who raised their hands.
I see Suzanne Reed.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. Is there a budget scope that we should be aware of in terms of preparing our scope of work?
No, not really. I mean, like I said, I mean, we uh, because we're open to, folks doing work along different timelines. The like that sort of varies a good bit, right? I mean, between like someone who's, just looking for like something over support over 3 or 4 months versus someone who wants to do work, from February of this coming year until like June of the following year. So, I mean, I will say that, like, feel free to pitch whatever, seems like it would be really helpful and impactful for you all. If all the right elements are there and it looks really encouraging, it looks like, like it could be a really impactful project at the end of the day, we will certainly follow up with folks and let you know if we need to adjust the scope down somewhat. We've had one-on-one conversations with folks in the past, coming back to them and saying, well, we can do probably 75% of what you're pitching here. Here's what we think we're probably best positioned to do. If this sounds good to you, we'll proceed, and check with you first. So yeah, I mean, I think pitch what apply with what makes sense for you all, and then if we need to scale it back, we'll get in touch and figure out how to best do that.
Oh, well, thank you. And regarding the stipends, we like to engage trusted leaders and community members in our outreach projects. Can the stipends be used to pay for that kind of participation and engagement?
Yeah, we've had some organizations in the past that have used it for exactly that purpose. So yeah, you're welcome to request that. And if it's a question for local governments out there, when it comes to the stipends, I know I get this sometimes. It's like we handle that directly with the organization, so we do not have to give a local government funding to then pass along to an organization. I know that for a lot of government folks that can be hard. So yeah, we'll handle that directly one-on-one.
Okay, and then would we ever meet you in person, or are we going to be mostly digital friends, or how does that work?
Maybe. I mean, I've certainly done some in-person stuff with this before. But I mean, a lot of it is virtual. I mean, the typical sort of interactions that we have with a lot of folks is, we'll do monthly. Most people do monthly check-ins, but again, to Roxana's point, we can scope that however makes sense for everyone involved. But yeah, we typically do monthly virtual check-ins. And there'll be deliverables going back and forth and drafts being passed online. But yeah, we are open to doing some in-person stuff. It just just depends on how we can work it out and make sure it happens. But yeah,
Super. Thank you for your answers.
sure.
Hi, I'm Haley Reed. I don't think I'm related to Suzanne Reed, but nice to meet you, Suzanne. I'm based in Alaska and currently work on a technical assistance program with rural Alaska communities based in like community energy planning, and renting is a huge energy efficiency challenge that folks in rural communities have in Alaska, as well as just in Alaska generally. Our like energy prices are much higher, so a lot of this seemed really relevant in a lot of use cases. And so I have, as also a technical assistance provider of a sort, I have a lot of specific questions. Hopefully, this other people have similar questions, and I saw Erica asking one about workforce development that I had as well. But I'm curious, with that context, kind of what is covered in the budget. I know you mentioned kind of doing surveys and things, and what is considered the community's financial responsibility when they're applying with the scope of work versus are you able to like cover the cost of sending surveys in the mail? And if you're developing them, kind of where does your financial like commitment start and end, or is it kind of fluid? Is one of my questions.
Yeah. Well, so on the, I mean, so it depends on the deliverable and the task that we're involved with, but on just use surveys as an example, right? So when doing surveys, what we've done in the past is, we've done the work of doing the initial drafts and coming up with, what those looked like. We have done the work of hosting online surveys. So we have a platform that we use to do survey work across the organization. And so we can actually, we do have the capacity, we already have the ability to host surveys online for folks. But as far as like doing something like a mail campaign or something like that, unfortunately we don't. That would be really outside the budget of what we'd be able to do, unfortunately. But we can definitely do, on something like surveys, like I said, we definitely do the work of like development. We can do the work of like hosting if it's an online survey. I've also formatted a paper survey as part of this initiative before. And then, we do the analysis work on the back end. So taking a look, doing all the data cleaning that's involved, and then taking a look to see what we can actually determine from the responses that came in. So again, that's just an example for surveys. And one of the things I think that just an overall principle though that I can say about sort of our capacity is that, us as in providing technical assistance, I mean, and this is one of the things that comes up in that like preferred, I think it's either the required or the preferred criteria that we're looking for is like, we're looking to complement some existing efforts, right? So our utility is really in helping to complement something that is maybe already going on or is going to be going on at the local level. We really can't do everything for an initiative or like a program or something like that. But we are probably best positioned with the funding that we have and the expertise to like be a complement to some other things that are going on at the local level.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think still really useful. And just my last question along those lines is kind of in your experience in Alaska specifically. I know we have some pretty unique policies and programs regarding energy. And I was just curious if you have folks on your team with specific experience and kind of, I know you said something about doing one-on-one interviews or focus groups. Like if you don't feel like the technical team at ACEE might be specific to Alaska, would you be like open to extending that TA to like subcontracting a local like group, or is that something you've worked in before?
Well, so Alaska, I can't, I mean, that would not be me. I can say that. I know that there are, I feel pretty good that we have a couple other folks who have had some connections and work there. Probably really, excuse me, to our state team. But yeah, I don't know for sure. I don't know who that would be or what their experience is. So I can't really say for certain. Um, as far as like doing things like interviews or or whatnot. I think one of one of the things that you know I mean I would have to look at the specific request, and see if we've never done anything where we've like sort of outsourced it to someone else outside of the TA team, right? So typically the conversation that we end up usually having about reaching out to stakeholders or whoever it is like, is it in the best interest of the technical assistance team for us to do that work or us to do that connecting? And there are some upsides and downsides, right? I mean, one of the upsides sometimes is that we're sort of this outside party, and we don't have necessarily that long history of maybe a complicated history that maybe some local stakeholders have with one another, right? And so that can be a benefit. But one of the other things to consider that we always have a conversation about, I think, when it comes to like who's doing the outreach, who's doing the engagement, is that we're only here for a little bit of time, and so the most effective projects that I've seen and that I've worked on are the ones where whatever we're doing is working to ultimately build longer term relationships between folks at a local level, so that the work that we start doing as part of this technical assistance like carries on, in the months and weeks and years afterwards. And so, in some cases, and that's really, I think, the conversation we probably end up having is like, is there someone on the project team? Is there someone local that is best positioned to do this? And can we get them involved in some way? And if it does make sense for us to do it, then we could do that. So yeah, hard to say with the specifics. I think we have to get into, bigger conversation, but that's what I would say.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it.
I know we're almost at time, so maybe we can answer just one more broader question. So I know the technical assistance really is aiming to improve like the rental housing or the energy efficiency rental housing, which will directly impact renters. And I know I saw a question of can this TA have sort of another tangential like focus maybe on like homeowners or another topic such as workforce development. And I know as far as like for at least for homeowners aspect, maybe the best, I know we've done a TA or done some TBA to really approach or reach like property owners, which may have like an impact for renters and their should like their housing situation. But Stefan, I was curious to hear from you if you have any like thoughts in terms of like if those sort of or application projects are sort of submitted with another focus like workforce development or with an approach for landlords or property owners, like yeah.
The funding we have for this initiative is really only for rental.
Okay.
Right. And so the thing is, it's like we can't really, like, if what we're doing has implications for other sectors or other topics, then great. That sounds fantastic. That gets to the point of like one of the preferred things we're looking for, right? Which is that it has a broader, like what we're doing can really have a broader appeal and impact. And I mean, so with a topic like workforce development, like if the workforce development question is really important for rental properties in particular in some way, then yeah, we could take a look at something like that. And maybe again, it has benefits in other areas of the community, right? But we are looking for something that, like, a question, a need that is specifically can be particularly articulated that has a tie to rental properties. It's something about rental properties that needs to be addressed or dealt with.
Great. Alrighty, so I know we're almost at time. So Stephanie, if you can go back to the slide with my contact information, that would be great. All right. Yeah, so we're at time now. So again, thank you all for joining us today on this call and for your interest in the TA application. I put my email in the chat, but for those who are seeing the screen here, can also take note of the email here. We look forward to reviewing your applications. And if you have any questions or would like to schedule a short call with us, please feel free to reach out to me.